Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please accept our humble obeisances. All glories to Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Gurudev, all glories to some of the Vaishnavi devotees. We thank you all for being here today. Today is Monday, marking the beginning of a new week. So we thank the Alashas for protecting us through the weekend and bringing us together again this new week. And today we have His Grace, SALIKA PRABHU, who will be speaking to us from the SRIMAD BHAGAVATAM. His Grace, SALIKA PRABHU, needs no introduction. He is one of the hosts of this Sangha. So everybody knows him. Prabhuji, we thank you for being here today and speaking to us today. So without further ado, we may put the rest on the screen and you may start speaking. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yes, we can start.
Very well.
Okay, you can just start. Prabhupada has chanted before?
Oh, yeah. He chanted, but we can also do it again. Yes. Prabhupada chanted Jaradhanadava before you came in.
Okay, then if Prabhupada has chanted, then we can go ahead.
All right.
I'll start the class. So we can take the verse and then continue.
Okay. Hare Krishna. Is it possible to see the screen?
Yes, we can see this.
Okay. All right.
Om Namo Bhagavati Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavati Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavati Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavati Vasudevaya. Narayana Namaskritam Narayachaivam Narottamam. Devi Sarasvati Dasam Statu Jayam Udiraye Master Price Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavatam Sevaya Bhagavati Uttamas Loke Bhagavati. Nice take. We're reading from SRIMAD BHAGAVATAM, second canto, chapter 5. Today we're reading from text number 17, the cosmic manifestation. Tasyat pi drastu isasya kutastaya skilatmanam srijyam sritohaham iksyai vabhisho odita. Tasya pi drastu isasya kutastasya kilahatmana srijyam sritohaham iksyai vabhishodita. Tasya pidrastu isasya kutastasya kilahatmana srijyam sritohaham iksyai vabhishodita. We read the word for word translation. Tasyaha is happy, certainly. Drastu of the seer, Isasya of the controller, Kuta Astasya of the one who is over everyone's intelligence. Akila Atmaha of the super soul. Srijam, that which is already created. Srijam, do I discover? Srichaha, created. Aham, myself. Iksaya, by glance over. Eva, exactly. Abhishodita, being inspired by. Translation and purport by Divine Grace, Labai Charanaravinda. Laisi Bhakti Vedanta Swami Patita Pavam Jagagushla Prabhupada. Inspired by him only, I discover what is already created by him, Narayan, under his vision as the all-pervading super soul. And I also am created by him only. Purport by his Divine Grace, La Prabhupada. Even Brahma, the creator of the universe, admits that he is not the actual creator, but is simply inspired by the Lord Narayan, and therefore creates under his superintendence those things already created by him. The super soul of all living entities, two identities of soul, the super soul and the individual soul, are admitted to be in the living entity, even by the greatest authority of the universe. The super soul is the Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead, whereas the individual soul is the eternal servitor of the Lord. The Lord inspires the individual soul to create what is already created by the Lord. And by the goodwill of the Lord, a discoverer of something in the world is accredited as a discoverer. It is said that Columbus discovered the Western Hemisphere. But actually, the tract of land was not created by Columbus, discovered by the Western Hemisphere. But actually, the tract of land was not created by Columbus. The vast tract of land was already there by the omnipotency of the Supreme Lord. And Columbus, by dint of his past service unto the Lord, was blessed with the credit of discovering America. Similarly, no one can create anything without the sanction of the Lord, since everyone sees according to his ability. This ability is also awarded by the Lord according to one's willingness to render service unto the Lord. Interesting. This ability is also awarded by the Lord according to one's willingness to render service unto the Lord. One must therefore be voluntarily willing to render service unto the Lord, and thus the Lord will empower the doer in proportion to his surrender unto the lotus feet of the Lord. Lord Brahma is a great devotee of the Lord. Therefore, he has been empowered or inspired by the Lord to create such a universe as the one manifested before us. The Lord also inspired Arjuna to fight in the field of Kurukshetra as follows. Tasmatvam utistaya so labaswa jitva satram bhukshwaragyam samridaham maya evaite nihata purvam heva nimita matram baba asa vyasashin. Bhagavad Gita chapter 11, text number 33. The battle of Kurukshetra or any other battle at any place or at any time is made by the will of the Lord. For no one can arrange such mass annihilation without the sanction of the Lord. The party of Duryodhana insulted Draupadi, a great devotee of Krishna, and she appealed to the Lord, as well as to all the silent observers of this unwarranted insult. Arjuna was then advised by the Lord to fight and take credit. Otherwise, the party of Duryodhana would be killed anyway by the will of the Lord. So Arjuna was advised just to become the agent and take the credit of killing great generals like Bhishma and Karna. In the Vedic writings, such as the Katha Upanishad, the Lord is described as the Sarva Bhuta Antaratma, or the personality of God who resides in everyone's body and who directs everything for one who is a soul surrendered unto him. Those who are not surrendered souls are put under the care of the material nature. Brahmanya Sarva Bhutani Yantra Rudani Mayaya. Therefore, they are allowed to do things on their own account and suffer the consequences themselves. Devotees like Brahma and Arjuna do not do anything on their own account, but as fully surrendered souls, they always await indications from the Lord. Therefore, they attempt to do something which appears very wonderful to ordinary vision. One of the Lord's name is Urukrama. The one who acts actions are very wonderful and are beyond the imagination of the living being. So, the actions of his devotees sometimes appear very wonderful due to the direction of the Lord, beginning from Brahma, the topmost intelligent living entity within the universe, down to the smallest ant. Every living entity's intelligence is overseen by the Lord in his transcendental position as the witness of all actions. The subtle presence of the Lord is felt by the intelligent man who can study the psychic effects of thinking, feeling, and willing. Umagyanam timirandasya Gyanam shalakaya Shaksho humilitam jena tasmai Sri Gurave namaha Sri Chaitanya manobishtam stapitam jena bhutale Swayam rupa kadamayam dadati swampada antikam Bandeham Sri Guru Sri Yuta Pada Kamalam Sri Guru Vaishnavamsya Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahaganam Ragunatam Vitam Tam Sahajivam Sadvitam Sabadutam Parijanam Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padak Sahaganam Lalita Sri Vishaka Vitamsha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagata Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Nama Ostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radevin Davane Eshwari Rishabhanu Shute Devi Pranamami Nari Priye Mokan Karoti Vachalam Pangam Lagayate Girim Yat Kripat Ampande Sri Guru Dinatarinam Vanchakarpataru Vyascha Kripa Sundubhya Sivascha Patitanam Pavashnavebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srinivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Tantra SRIMAD Bhagavatam class ki jai. Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please once again I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. The verse we are reading today is SRIMAD Bhagavatam, 2nd Canto, chapter 5, text number 17, which says that Tasya Pidrastu Isasya Kutas Tasya Kilatmanam Srijam Sritu Aham Iksya Yaiva Bishodita. And translation says that inspired by him, I discover what is already created by him, Narayan, under his vision as the all-pervading super soul. And I also am created by him only. So we want to thank all of the devotees for making it to this platform today. Before endeavoring to render this service of repeating the words of Srila Vyasadeva, once again, I offer my respectful obeisances to our predecessors, spiritual master, unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and to all of the Vaishnava devotees, both senior, junior, and those who are contemporaries. We plead and beg at your divine lotus feet that we may be able to render this service for the pleasure of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and for the purification of the speaker. There is a general saying when the beginning of the SRIMAD BHAGAVATAM discussed. This verse is very beautiful. Why? Because everything about the Lord is beautiful. So I was going to say this, we're going to be speaking on this most beautiful verse of the SRIMAD BHAGAVATAM, but every verse of the BHAGAVATAM is sweet. So every narrator or speaker of the BHAGAVATAM says this BHAGAVATAM is very sweet. Today, I will try to speak on 3 points, which bordered around the Supreme Personality of Godhead, how he creates. Why does he create? And how does his creation functions? Because the text we're reading today is bordering on these 3 topics. Generally, in this material world, there are 2 kinds of persons that exist. Actually, the whole of this material jagat, there are only 2 things that exist. And there are only 2 types of person that exist in these 2 things. When we do analytical study of everything within the universe, only 2 things are manifested at the end of the day. And that is knowledge and ignorance. Every other thing that anyone could philosophize is illusion. There is nothing else. And because there are only 2 things, there are only 2 types of persons. Those who are wise and those who are unwise. Those who are wise in the Vedic scriptures are described as bhaktas or devotees. And those who are unwise are described as demoniac. And how you know the wise different from the unwise is what Lord Brahma is elucidating to us in this verse that we're reading today. Lord Brahma is saying that because only he, Lord Brahma, is inspired by the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself, was he only able to do whatever gigantic creation that we need. That is the first point. And that brings us to the topic of how does the Lord create? How does the Lord functions? When we talk about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, to those who are non-devotees, the Lord is abstract. And that's why when you ask an impersonality, it's described God as omnipotent, omnipresent, and that is the end. Because it cannot understand the personality behind the omnipresent and omnipresent Supreme Personality of Godhead. Just like a businessman creates a gigantic industry only for the purpose of his own pleasure, the Supreme Personality of Godhead has manifested all that we experience, all that we see. But the Lord, because of his nature, because of his supreme nature, and because of our conditioning, we cannot relate to him. So therefore, the Lord transmits all of his activities through his representatives. And one who is able to understand that whatever is being done, whatever is being thought of, whatever is being manifested, is only done by only that one supreme personality of Godhead, that person is described as a devotee. And that is what is being described here in the verse that we're reading this today. That Lord Brahma, the creator of the universe, to an ignorant person, is the creator. But Lord Brahma only creates only by the inspiration of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, based on what he has already done. Just like a businessman, he has developed the visibility studies in his head. He has knowledge of what and what is to be done. Then he brings in a managing director, he brings a supervisor, he brings in a general manager, and he brings all kinds of different individuals to actualize that, although he can do it by himself. In the same way, the Lord naturally manifests his desire through his representatives. When we look at the history of the universe, because the nature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is that he always enjoys, he has no work to do, just like a successful man. He has no business doing anything. We will never see the picture of Krishna in hard labor. He never does that. He does through his representatives, his manifestations. And one who is able to understand this perception, one who is able to understand this reality, is called a wise person. And that is the person that Lord Krishna is referring to in the first verse of the Chatusloki of the Bhagavad Gita, where he says, Aham sarvasya prabhava mata sarva pravatate iti matva bhajante ma buddha bhava. He's an intelligent person because what? Naturally, he surrenders himself to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The greatest challenges of the living entity in the material world is that he is considering himself to be the Ishwara, or the controller of what he is able to endeavor to achieve. And therefore, because he's thinking that way, he suffers, as stated in the chapter 15 of the Bhagavad Gita. Prakriti, Korshati, is struggling with the six senses, including the mind. Sometimes he's happy, sometimes he's not happy, sometimes he's blissful, sometimes he's miserable. But Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu described differently those who are devotees. Ataiva Santa. Because why? They understand that everything is owned and controlled by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So therefore, they surrender to the will of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Prabhupada gave a vivid example in the Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna was faced with a fratricidal war, and he was so confused, he was so miserable. He said so many philosophy, wonderful philosophy, but at the end of the day, his miserable situation increased. When he realizes, after so much, by the grace of the Lord, by taking shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in surrender, he came to realize his position. And Srila Prabhupada is explaining the purport that Arjuna, by the grace of the Lord, he was able to achieve the unachievable. A general like Grishma Dev, Arjuna has no capacity to pick up a hair out of his head. But because he's under the shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because he realized that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is Krishna and he surrenders unto him, the impossible becomes possible for him. And that is what Srila Prabhupada said in the Bhagavad Gita, that impossibility is only found in the dictionary of a foolish man. In other words, there is nothing practically impossible for the Jiva Atma to achieve. Its impossibilities are only as due to the fact that of lack of knowledge, of surrendering or realizing the position that it belongs to. Lord Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Mamai Jiva Loke, Jiva Bhuta, Sanatana. This living entity, they might eternal fragmental part and parcel. That is his position. His position is that it's part and parcel. And the nature of the part is to surrender to serve the whole. The whole of our study of the scriptures, the whole of religious practice, the whole of the religious principles is centered around these one principles. And that is why Lord Krishna told Arjuna, when Arjuna was speaking so much of wonderful philosophy, Krishna told him, you're speaking so wonderfully. Like a big philosopher. But you're foolish. Why are you foolish? Because the basic fundamental thing you do not understand. And this is the whole reason why the whole world that we exist in is in the kind of crisis that we found, because of this identity crisis. Over the weekend, someone called me all of a sudden from somewhere. And he said, there is a fire. I said, fire? Oh, have you called the fire brigade? What is the problem? He said there was a sermon given by my pastor today, and the whole church almost went into big problem. And what was the challenge? In the course of the preaching, the pastor said that today I want to talk about identity crisis. You use another vocabularies, not identity crisis, identity challenge, something has to do like that. But the problem was that in the course of his speaking, he ended up making a statement. He wanted to, he apparently, probably have read the books like Bhagavad Gita, and he said, God does not reside in the heavens. He could not substantiate this with any verse from the Bible. And that became a big challenge. His narration was centered around trying to bring about the knowledge of the soul. But in the course of doing that, it created more confusion. And there was a rowdy situation. So one of the members we said, there is a challenge here. We've attended one of your lectures and you were talking about the identity of the self. I just came out of the service now. There's a big, the church sermon in the morning has become a challenge. Questions is being asked. Please tell me, does God reside in heaven? Or does he not reside in heaven? So that is a big challenge now in the church. The old church is rowdy. And I asked him, I said, well, what do you think? He said, I don't even know what to say. I said, well, both the said person that said God reside in the heaven and the person that said God does not reside in heaven, both of them are correct. He said, you're making me more confused now. How can somebody be inside, residing somewhere and not residing at the same place? And I quoted the book of Matthew. I said, Jesus Christ said to us in the Matthew 24 that heaven and earth shall pass away. The Bible tells us God created the heavens. In the Quran, the same thing assertion is made. And I quoted the Quran, Surah 41. And I quoted several scriptures. I said, yes, God created. But before creating them, he must be residing somewhere. Just like you build a house, you live in your own house. Before you live in your own house, you were living somewhere. But after building your own house, you start to live in your own house. So God simultaneously lives in the heaven and he does not live in the heaven. Only a Bhakta can understand this. And how does he understand this absolute knowledge? By taking shelter of the Supreme Personality of God, realizing, taking knowledge from the Supreme Authority, Krishna himself. So Prabhupada quoted in the purport that Arjuna, at the battlefield of Kurukshetra, he was able to do the unthinkable only because he realizes the position of the Supreme Personality of God. And Srila Prabhupada read Katha Upanishad. That the Supreme Personality of God who reside in everyone's body and who directs everything for one who is a soul surrendered unto him. But who can understand this? How the Lord resides in the body and at the same time he resides in his kingdom. Only a devotee and also cannot become such a devotee because he's such a person has surrendered to the knowledge of the Supreme Personality of God. Aparayam itasku anyam bina prakriti ashtada jiva bhuta mahabaho yahidam daryate jagat. But Krishna, he told Arjuna that apart from the 8 gross material elements that constitute all that is seen in this material world, exists the spirit soul. And that spirit soul is part of himself. So Sukadev Goswami, he mentioned in the earlier part of the Bhagavatam, Vedanti Tattva Vidas, Brahmiti Prameti, Bhagawan, Iti Sabdaye. The only one who is, by the grace of the Lord, acquire that knowledge of the Lord, only such a person can understand how the Lord is simultaneously the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Paramahatma who resides in the living entity's body, and also the impersonal Brahma. Only a devotee can understand this. So the Lord is so great, such a great personality that he makes himself available at the same time, simultaneously makes himself unavailable, depending on the conditioned soul's consciousness. So in the verse we're reading, it is being demonstrated here that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is described as Sarva Bhuta Antaratma. It resides in everybody's body, and it directs the wandering of the living entities. And that is what Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita chapter 15. I'm directing in chapter 18, sorry, that's number 65, I think. I'm seated in the art of the living entity as that is as a machine directing the wandering of the activities of the soul. That is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that is the beginning of Brahma Samhita, where Lord Brahma declared, Ishvara Paraman Krishna Sakchidananda Vrigraha. Adhadyadi Govindam Sarva Karanam. That the Supreme Personality of Godhead is Krishna. And is the one. Is the one directing the activities of the living entity. One who knows this fact is considered to be a wise person. In chapter 18, 61, Prabhupada is paraphrasing of the Bhagavad Gita. Ishvara Sarva Bhutanam. Read it. They said, Arjuna Atistati. Brahmanyam Sarva Bhutani Yantra Rudani Mayaya. Lord Krishna is telling Arjuna that I, the Supreme Personality of God, am dwelling in the heart of all living beings. And according to their karmas, according to their activities, I'm directing the wandering of the souls who are seated as on a machine. Thank you for bringing that up. I'm directing the activities. So the scientists, the archaeologists, the physicians, and all the great artistic personality in the personality of the world are all modeling after the manifestation of the Supreme Personality of God. And one who is able to understand this is considered a wise person. The ability to understand this simple fact makes someone an unwise person, and that person is described as an ignorant person. So the whole of the Vedic literatures, the whole of the religious principles is to bring one to this understanding, one realization that Krishna is everything. Everything is him. But that could be confusing. And that is why the impersonalists sometimes assert that the fact that they are God. But how is simultaneously one and different cannot be understood unless one will submit himself to this understanding. So the subtitle of this chapter of the Bhagavatam we're reading is talking about the cosmic manifestation. The Lord creates, how the Lord creates is what is being described in the whole of this chapter. And as we go further in the next verse, to the next verse, Lord Krishna will start explaining how this is manifested, how these activities are manifested by the influence of the three modes of material nature. How material nature, just like the managing director manages everything under the guidance and the supervision of the chairman of an establishment. Lord Brahma creates after Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But just like even in an ordinary business, when the crisis arises, the managing director needs the intervention of the chairman or the founder or the sole proprietor of the organization institution. And that is why Lord Narayan himself has to maintain. And for the work of dissolution, he empowers Shambhu or Lord Shiva to do the work of dissolution. So as we go further in this chapter of the SRIMAD BHAGAVATAM, we will start hearing how these activities, how the Lord actually directly acts in these various ways to manage the affairs of the Lord. How the eyes blink, how the nose is able to smell, how the fire of indigestion works in the system by the agencies of different devas who are direct arms and legs of the Supreme Personality of God, is explained. And the way to understand this is simple. It's just to surrender, as Prabhupada explained in the purport of the verse that we're reading. That this is possible when he was quoting the Katha Upanishad. One can become a co-creator. One can become able to become a successful individual only when such a person becomes surrendered to the Lord. To the degree an individual surrenders himself or herself to the Supreme Personality, to that degree, that person becomes a success. And that is why at the end of all of the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna, he told Arjuna that, my dear Arjuna, you have heard. And Arjuna explained, yes, I've heard you, and I'm willing and ready to fight. And the very last verse of the Bhagavad Gita, 1878, it explains that wherever there is Krishna, the supreme mystic, a devotee of his like Arjuna becomes the greatest usher, and then success is guaranteed. So therefore, as an individual devotee, if we ever want to experience success, thank you. Wherever there is Krishna, the supreme master of all mystics, and wherever there is Arjuna, who becomes the archer, there will also certainly be opulence, victory, extraordinary power, and morality. Sanjaya says. So when we look at our individual lives, when we look at our individual projects, when we look at individual marital life, when we look at our individual sadhana life, then we can understand whether the Lord is acknowledged or not acknowledged. When Lord Krishna, when he went to the palace of Dhritarashtra before the battle of Kurukshetra, when Duryodhana heard that Lord Krishna was coming, Duryodhana, being a typical materialistic person, he was thinking, I will woe him. And he made Shakuni to arrange a very nice palatial arrangement for Lord Krishna to stay, with a nice facility. When Krishna was coming, Ashantidu, or the peace messenger. And when Lord Krishna came, Lord Krishna refused. He said, I will stay in the austere room of, what is his name now? Vidura, sorry, yes. He decided to stay in the house of Vidura. And why did the Lord decide to stay there? That was later revealed in the Mahabharata. Vidura was asking Lord Krishna, Duryodhana has made a very wonderful, nice arrangement for you. Why are you not staying there? Lord Krishna said, I prefer to stay here. But Vidura said, actually, I never wanted you to come because I still have very, very glaring memory in my heart when Draupadi was insulted. How Duryodhana insulted you very grossly. So I didn't want you to come. Why did you have to come, Lord Krishna? You didn't have to come here. Because I know that Duryodhana has his evil plans. And his plan is that he's trying to capture you. He's trying to arrest you. I know he has no capacity to do that, but that humiliation, I cannot bear it. And Lord Krishna said, just watch as everything goes. And when Lord Krishna, after he has gone to the palace of Dhritarashtra, and Duryodhana has played all his games, and at the end of the day, Lord Krishna was about to leave, he revealed to Vidura, that actually, I'm aware that Duryodhana would never accept my peace message. It is my desire to remove all of the demoniac kings on the earth. But to give some justification, Duryodhana has to become obstinate. So I allowed him, although I knew he was not going to. So I allowed him. I gave him all the opportunity to exhibit. So when one does not align his desire or will in accordance with that of the personality of God, it becomes a failure. So that's the essence of the verse. So here it is being mentioned that devotees of the Lord, they appear very wonderful due to the direction of the Lord, beginning from Lord Brahma to the topmost intelligent person on the earth, down to the smallest living entity, Indra Gopa. Because their intelligence is overseen by the Lord in his transcendental position as the witness of all action. And that presence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is felt by the intelligence man who can study the physics of effects of thinking, feeling, and willing. I'll conclude this purport by explaining that. So this Krishna consciousness is the most difficult process, but is the most simplest process. If one simply understand the principles of this Krishna consciousness. So Krishna consciousness simply means acknowledging the position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And as he has said in Bhagavad Gita chapter 10, verse 10, that one who endeavor to achieve anything in devotion to him, for pleasing his purpose, for fulfilling his purpose, such a person becomes a successful person because he gives the intelligence by which such a person becomes a success. And that is the essence of all of this verse that we read today. So the ABC of Krishna consciousness is what the verse we're reading today explains about. That ultimately, whatever we learn, whatever we eat, whatever we see, whatever we speak, once the supreme position of the Supreme Personality of God is acknowledged, then one becomes a successful person. And that's the whole of Krishna consciousness philosophy. And this is what all of the acharyas are teaching us. The three modes of material nature that controls and manages the affairs of the material world is very difficult to overcome. But she becomes easily a subservient to one who is a devotee of the Supreme Personality of God. And a devotee is someone very easily. So I would like to stop here. So summarily, the first reading says that inspired by him only, Brahma discovered what is already created by him, Narayan, under his vision as the all-pervading super soul. And he, Brahma, acknowledges that he also is created by him only. Hare Krishna. So if there
Hare Krishna, thank you so much, Prabhuji, for speaking at the Bhagavatam. As always, very beautiful. If anyone may have questions, comments, realizations, please you may unmute and you'll be allowed to speak or to share. I have a question from the purport, Srila Prabhupada's purport. Let me see if I may put it up here and then. Okay, so here, Srila Prabhupada is saying here why I've highlighted. Similarly, no one can create anything without the sanction of the Lord, since everyone sees according to his ability. And I was thinking that this his ability will be Krishna's ability, but it's not Krishna's, it's the individual jiva's ability. And Prabhupada goes further to state that this ability is also awarded by the Lord according to one's willingness to render service unto the Lord. Now, the question I have is that as struggling devotees, we're trying to render service to the Lord. And externally, we can tell that some devotees are really, really surrendered to the Lord. Yet these devotees, whom most of us would consider to be very, very surrendered to the Lord, and they having this willingness to do something to serve the Lord, are unable to do it. How do we understand that? Does that mean that those devotees whom we see and consider to be very surrendered to the Lord are not really surrendered to the Lord? Or it could also mean that surrendering to the Lord does not mean that you're always going to get what you want. Can you please help with this statements Srila Prabhupada is making here? Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much for that beautiful question. Yeah, and that is why the Vedic scripture is described as, is understood only by one who understands the philosophy of simultaneously one and different. When you look at the verse of the Bhagavad Gita Prabhupada quoted, in the course of the discussion, Prabhupada was talking about chapter 18, text number 61, how it directs the wandering of the living entity. But there's something that is very unique in that statement. If you bring that verse up, it is said, according to the person's karma. In other words, each and every living entity has ability given to him or her according to the degree of what that person has engaged in his previous karma. Thank you. So the Supreme Lord is in everyone and directing the wonder of living entity who are seated in his machine as material energy. I want to see that the Sanskrit. The Sanskrit text. Up. There's somewhere there. Let's look at the word for word. I'm trying to pick a word there. Ishwara Sarva Bhutanam, really this is Junatitas Brahmaya Sarva Bhutan Yantra Rudaniyamaya. Okay, it's all right. According to his karma, let's look at Bhagavad Gita chapter 7, verse number 8. Where Lord Krishna is talking about himself being the ability in man, and Prabhupada gave a purport.
It is 7 verse 8.
Verse 7 verse 8. Indeed, Prabhupada, one who knows God knows that the impersonal conception and personal conception are continuously present in everything and that there is no contradiction. Therefore, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu established a sublime doctrine, Abheda Tattva, simultaneously oneness and difference. That is the answer to the question that you are asking. The last paragraph, the last sentence in the first paragraph of that purport. So the living entities in the material world are given ability as according to their previous karma. Yeah. Living entities, when they come into the material existence, when you look at Bhagavad Gita, that's number 26. Lord Krishna explains what brings the living entity into this conditional world.
Can you repeat the reference, please?
Chapter 7, text number 26.
Okay.
I think is that the verse?
Is it 28 instead?
No, not 38. Go back. Before it says this 26, before 26, let's go back a little bit. Go up. Go. Where it says Isha Duisha. Go back. Okay, stop here. 20. Let's start from 21. I mean, everyone's heart as a super soul, and as one desires to worship some demigod. Okay, not that verse. Okay, let me check the verse myself. Yes, I know it's chapter 7. Bhagavad Gita chapter 7. Just a second. It's 7:27. Actually, it's Isha Dusha Samutina. It's verse 27 I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's 7:27.
Yeah, Isha Dusha Samutina, don't the Muhena Barata, Sarva Bhutani Samuham, Yanti Paranta. But the living entity are born into delusion according to their desire. What I wanted to use there is Isha and Dwesha, according to their desire and their aid. What is this aid? Wanting to become the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So based on the level of the desire the living entity has, is given a particular capacity to experience based on his desire. So it becomes the creator, just like we reading in the verse we're reading today. The Brahma has created so many wonderful creations in the universe. But those creations are not creations of Lord Brahma. They are created by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who has inspired, according to the word used in the verse, Lord Brahma in his art, to create, modeling after what the Lord has already created. So the question of whether the Lord is the ability, the living does have ability, is answered by the fact that the Lord ability of the living entities are only possible based on what is given to the living entity according to his karma or previous activities, based on his desires. I don't know whether that addresses the question you're trying to resolve. Or probably I didn't understand properly.
No, it does, but I'm wondering how, because we're talking about the possibility of achieving something in life, which has to be as a result of one's surrender to God. But we see lots of the time, in fact, somebody just shared on the Hare Krishna Africa WhatsApp platform, one very big astrophysicist, whom I adore so much, is a very intelligent man. But he's an atheist. He does not believe in the existence of God. But this person and many people like him, because simply of their willingness to make something happen, they are able to make those things happen. Whereas there are other devotees, other people, devotees, who have the willingness to do something, and they are even surrendered to God, yet they are unable to manifest what they want to build. That is my confusion, I should say.
Yeah, it's a simple, very simple scenario to understand. We all are kids. Our child sees the father is driving a car and wants to drive the car. The ability to drive the car is within the child, but he does not have the capability because of the body that he carries or she carries. And that's what I was trying to explain, that the living entity are born with a particular, endowed with a particular quality based on their previous activities and desire. So even though they are desiring something now, because of the kind of the body they have acquired now, that does not mean that the Lord is not answering the prayers of those devotees. Those desires will become manifested when they have developed the appropriate capacity based on the quality of their devotion, based on the quality of their surrender to God. They will be able to manifest that. And just like when Srila Prabhupada was instructed by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur in 1922, Srila Prabhupada was an empowered incarnation of God. So he's different, but he's acting like an ordinary person. Srila Prabhupada was instructed in 1922 because he has studied English that he should go to the West and preach to the Western world. And Prabhupada could not come. And even in 1965, Prabhupada has taken sannyasi. Prabhupada did not come. Prabhupada had to translate all over again. Bhagavad Gita, the SRIMAD BHAGAVATAM, first 2-3 chapters, cantos of the SRIMAD BHAGAVATAM, because he needed certain things to express what he needs to share. So the fact that someone desires and that desire is not manifesting immediately does not mean that that desire is not being fulfilled. In the Nectar of Devotion, Srila Rupa Goswami explains this, that karma or our activities are determined or are of different categories. Sometimes our desire, because they are not matured enough, they take several times. And I give a very practical example in the Mahabharata. When you look at the stories of and the story of Mahabharata, the Dhritarashtra was asking Lord Krishna after the whole world, after the old battlefield of Kurukshetra, the Dhritarashtra was asking Krishna, why is it that I have 100 sons and only one of them could not be spared? What have I done wrong? What is my sin? That I have 100 children and not even one. And we understand, and the Bhagavatam explains to the Mahabharata explains that the Dhritarashtra had to face that fate. Why? Because in his previous life, he has committed a heinous sin. He was hunting as a hunter, and he was aiming at a particular bird. And because the bird escaped, he decided to descend on the babies of the bird, which are 100 in numbers, and he destroyed all of them. Then he asked for that, but if that be the case, so why is it that it has to be in this manner? And Lord Krishna explained to him that in your previous birth, you could not have been able, you don't have the cap, you don't have the punya karmana or the pious credit to bear 100 children. So you have to take birth for that number of years to accumulate the piety that will give you the ability to be able to have 100 children, so that you can pay for the karma that you have created in your previous 100 lives back. But the beauty of bhakti is that, and that is what the verse you are pointing to when I was trying to quote that verse in the Bhagavad Gita chapters, the very next verse to that, number 27. Yesham Tuanta Gata Prabham, Lord Krishna says, engages in pious activities in previous life and in this life. When one's sinful activities is eradicated, only then one is able to engage in bhakti. In other words, our determination, our intelligence, our capabilities, our experience, our intelligence to do certain things are built up based on our karma. So a scientist who is able to do so many marvelous things is not acting just because he's pious in this life. It is a result of his previous karma that has put him in that situation. Just like when the manufacturer manufactures a trailer, he manufactures a car, and the same manufacturer produces a bicycle. The capacity of speed of each of these manufacturing has been created alongside with them. So when you buy a motorcycle, you cannot expect it to run faster than the car. And when you buy a trailer, you don't say because the trailer is such a big vehicle, so it must run faster because it has a bigger body. It must run faster than a smart car. The plane can run thousands of kilometers in just few seconds, but then It is based on the capacity that is built into it. So thank you, Prabhu. So just a minute. Good, Prabhu. So the karma of a living entity is built with its birth. So when one takes birth in a particular body, is a carried over from his previous life. And our present life is a preparation for the next. So our ability that whatever we do, we are able to achieve in this present body is as a result of what we have built in our previous karma. And whatever we are desiring now, some of them may appear in this lifetime and we think, oh, I have achieved it. I desire to do this and I've achieved it. No, that achievement is as a result of the fact that it is already in our house of karma, or pious credit. No one can achieve anything that has not been prepared unless by the supreme will of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So karma works in such a way. The devotee gave just to round up this answer, the devotee gave one example of a cyclone that is used in storing grains. And he gave an example of a cyclone is what you put grains inside. And a farmer produces a grains and store them in the cyclone. We all know how a cyclone is the mouth is small and the whole body is big, and you put in all of the grains from the top. And the cyclone is put in the first year, the farmer produces a bad grains. He put them inside, he stored them there. The second year, he produces another grains. He put them on top of the one that is there. And in the third year, he puts another one. And this time around, maybe in the first and the second year, he has produced a grains that is not grade A. But in the third year, he was successful to be able to produce a grade A grains, and he put them inside. And he said, yes, now that I've produced a very wonderful grains, let me sell and make maximum money. And he opened the cyclone, and then when he opened it, what was coming out? A bad grain, or grade C grains. And he's wondering, but I'm putting a grade A grains inside the cyclone. Why is he bringing out a grade C? It is because that is what he has put in ahead of although presently he's putting in a grade A grains, but in the past he has put a grade C, and that is why he's experiencing the coming out of a grade C grains. So in the same way, whatever a living entity is able to achieve in this present body is as a result of his previous karma. And whatever we're doing now gives us the experience that we experience in our next body. But there are some activities that can manifest right in this present body. So Srila Rupa Goswami explained in Nectar of Devotion that the karma are of three kinds. There are those that are in the seed form. When we engage in them, they will not produce result now. In the future, they will produce result. Just like somebody is massively committing murder all up and down, and is sitting as the president of a nation. And somebody be wondering, how this person is committing so many crimes. We can see him as a president that is committing so much great heinous activities. But why is he sitting there? Why is nature giving him opportunity to sit as the richest person in the whole of the nation? It's not because of the activities he's performing now. Those positions that he's experiencing is as a result of his previous activities. But in his next body, he will reap the result of what he's presently doing. So a devotee who is acting piously now and is experiencing some difficulties in achieving certain desires is advised in the 11th canto of the SRIMAD BHAGAVATAM, I think 8th chapter, that Tate Nukampam, what is the conclusion of that? Tate Nukampam, that one who engages in devotional service with full determination, while absorbing the experience of the previous present reactions, the kingdom of God becomes its rightful claim. That is a quotation from, it's actually 10 canto 14 chapter text number 8. 10:14:8.
All right.
SRIMAD BHAGAVATAM 10th Canto, chapter 14, text number 8.
Ten 14:8.
10:14:8.
All right. Got it.
See if I can also get it from here. Yeah, tate no kampam su sam is shamano. Bunjanam evat makritam vipakam rit vapubi vidavi namaste he. Juitat yo mukti pade sat dayabak. My dear Lord, one who earnestly waits for you to bestow your costless mercy upon him, all the while patiently suffering the reactions of his past misdeeds, and offering you respect, obeisances with his heart, words, and body, eligible for liberation, for it has become his rightful claim. So that is the hope given to that one who is engaging in activities and now seemingly is suffering. So Mr. Gould wants to say something. Yeah, Govina Prabhu, before we come to you, Mr. Gould wants to say something. Simon Vara Prabhu's hand also is up, but Mr. Gould has sent a message earlier.
Yeah, I think I may read what Gul Prabhu said. It says, dearest Prabhus and Bhaktas, I just wanted to add some thoughts which might be useful with the interpretation. Devotees often assume surrender implies material surrender, the sacrifices, offerings, etc. But surrender is also of the imagination to the Supreme Lord. Let the imagination be fully tapped into an infinite sense of wonder, and then you realize a spiritually scientific interconnection of everything manifested and unmanifested.
Thank
So
you.
that is what Guru Prabhu is sharing, which is very interesting. And so we go to Shumavara Prabhu, please, you may unmute. And then we'll go to Govinda Prabhu.
6104. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
As my humble obeisances, Salika Prabhu, and to all the assembled devotees, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. So many things been said about your question, the question Sadi Prabhu posed. And I think Krishna himself answered this question in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 15, text 5. Krishna answered by explaining Nirmana Mohajita Sangadosa, that verse. One who knows how to surrender about one. So maybe if we can put the verse up, Nirmana.
Yeah, those who are free from false prestige, delusion, and false association, who understand the eternal, who are done with material lust, who are free from the dualities of happiness and distress, and who are unbewildered, know how to surrender unto the Supreme Person, attain to that eternal kingdom.
Yeah, so the point here is that the question, those who know how to surrender. So in your answer, you mentioned quality of surrender. So that's very important. And that's why I'm quoting this verse. So I'm also contributing this verse. Knowing how to surrender is very important. Just like Mr. Gu just mentioned, surrender is not physical body, or the dress, in fact, one pitfall of a bhakta who is similarly surrendered is pride. And what is that pride? The pride that by my sadhana, I will attain Krishna. by my activities, by my spiritual sadhana, yes, I will attain Krishna. That pride actually shows that the devotee doesn't know how to surrender yet. It is not all about our sadhana. And it is not all about our karma also. It is about grace.
The mercy of the Lord.
The mercy of the Lord is paramount. So even when we're doing sadhana, we're using that to attract His grace, but we do not think that it is by our sadhana that we're going to attain Krishna. So somebody may be seemingly surrendered, manifesting so much sadhana, but then inwardly there's some pride that is blocking his surrender because he's counting on his own ability, not the grace of the Lord. So this verse where the Lord mentioned one who knows how to surrender and those things that he is freed from, we have to consider that because we may be thinking somebody is surrendered, but in reality, he's not free from all these points mentioned here by Krishna. So that is my contribution. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji. So that's it.
Thank you so much.
It is said that there are three factors that brings about a manifestation of activities. Ishwara, the supreme controller.
To the verse. Oh, Jacob.
No, sorry. Right.
Okay. So there are three factors that brings about the manifestation of activities. The action itself, the jiva, and the supreme. So when all of these three comes together, in chapter 18 of the Bhagavad Gita, it is said in the Bhagavad Gita chapter 18, Lord Krishna said in the Bhagavad Gita, I think verse number 11, 12, and 13, Lord Krishna was talking about these three factors that leads to manifestation of action. When he talked about when he talked about chapter text number 13, actually the whole of that explanation is made by Lord Krishna from text 11, and then in chapter 13 he mentioned that there are 5 causes of for the accomplishment of action, and Krishna says to Arjuna that he should learn that from him. And so if we can bring that up, okay. Let's read from 13, 14 downward. So Krishna is saying, Almighty Arjuna, according to Vedanta, there are 5 causes for the accomplishment of all actions. Now, one of them for me, the place of action, the body, the performer, the various senses, the many different kinds of endeavor, and ultimately the super soul. These are the 5 factors of action. So all of this has to come in place. Then we can see an activity manifesting. Without this completion of all of this, we can't, nothing can be manifested in our existence. So these are the factors that contribute to the super soul is ultimately the ultimate sanctioner of all activities. Then it becomes manifested. Thank you. Govinda Prabhu.
Yeah, Govinda Prabhu, please, you may unmute.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. My respectful obeisances to you, Prabhu. All glory to Gurudev, all glory to Srila Prabhupada. Prabhu, my question and the contribution is that the conditioned souls, our success and failures are considered through the manifestation of whatever we are desiring for. But for a pure devotee, because a pure devotee is not acting based on his karma. The pure devotee does not have karma. The pure devotee is karma free. Then his activities are all conducted by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because he has made himself available as an instrument. And so whatever the Lord wants him to do is what he does. I remember once Gurudev by Teta Maharaj was asked, question about gurus knowing everything. And his answer was that Guru knows what Krishna wants him to know. And so for a pure devotee, whether success or failure is success. And his only duty is to carry on whatever Krishna has asked him to do. So that would be my comment. But I also have three questions. Three questions I would like to ask. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, go ahead. One question at a time, though.
Yeah, one question at a one question. All right, Prabhu. This question is a kind of anyway, I'll still ask. You know, a living entity is always accompanied by the super soul, by the Lord in the heart. And the Lord in the heart gives the ability based on the desire and the purity of the living entity. So if the living entity is desiring to do a particular thing and is very, very anxious to do that very thing, the Lord may advise him from the heart. But if the living entity is so desirous to do that very thing, the Lord will not force him. The Lord will not force him. He will rather give him that ability to act. Of course, at the end of it all, he has to pay his karma. So the question is, then what is the Lord doing there? Since he's not forcing the living entity to act, and the living entity still has its freedom to act, even though the Lord is giving him all kind of good stuff, then why is the Lord still there? And the same question is that, does that mean that the living entity has, without the accompanying of the super soul, the living entity is dumped? Is dumped that he cannot think, he cannot act, that he can only act, if the Lord is there. Because in the spiritual world, when the living entity get back to the spiritual world, the super soul is no more there. Does it mean that if the living entity is in the material world, he cannot act because the super soul is not there?
Thank you. The living entity has the capacity to act only because the living entity, as we explained in the course of the discussion, the Bhagavad Gita says, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Mamaivam so jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatana. You are driving a vehicle. The steering has the ability to move the vehicle to the right, to the left, to the whatever way you want it to go. But the steering cannot move itself without the without you, the driver, driving, manipulating the steering. In the same way, the Lord is the cause of all causes, and everything is meant for his pleasure. Just like in the beginning we explained that the Lord, all of the manifestation of the Lord are meant for the Lord's enjoyment. The challenge with the living entity is that the whole of the creation of the material manifestation is created for the Lord, for us to assist the Lord in enjoying. But the living entity wants the Lord to assist him in enjoying in material nature. That is where the problem comes in. The living entity is not independent, though he has a minute independency to be able to act in a particular way based on the sanctioning of the Lord. So therefore, there is said to be that the living entity is the Lord. The Lord is the sanctioning of, is the supreme sanctioner of all activities. The living entity is the desire of activities. But even the living entity does not do anything. When we go to the next verse, which we are going to be reading tomorrow, the Lord mentioned there that for the purpose of activities, it's only material nature that is doing that in the form of the three modes of material nature: goodness, passion, and ignorance. The living entity does not act just like the Lord because it's part of the Lord. It simply enjoys the result of his desire because it's part of the Lord. The living entity is part and parcel of the Lord, just like the Lord is an enjoyer. The living entity also is an enjoyer, but it's a minute enjoyer. His enjoyment is in the enjoyment of the Lord. But when the living entity wants to enjoy outside of the Lord, then it suffers. So the nature of the living entity is that, yes, your question is, does it mean that it's a robot? It's not a robot. He has the ability to enjoy, but his enjoyment is dependent on the enjoyment of the Lord. So when he wants to enjoy outside of the Lord, then he experiences difficulties. But in any case, both the living entity and the Supreme Lord does not engage in any activities. The Lord engages activities through the three modes of material nature. Activities are carried out by the three gunas: goodness, passion, and ignorance. Only those act. The living entity is just a witness, enjoying the result of his desires. His only ability is what the inheritance of the living entity is ability to desire. And that desire is what gives him the experiences that he goes through. So whether it is bad, whether it is good, whether it's mild, whether it is tough, all is manifested to him based on his desire. So in other words, in a summary, you can say the only capability of the living entity is to desire. And that desire produces what he experiences. Just like the Lord, and is supremely positioned, is the supreme origin of all origins, is the creator of all creations, and he creates them for his own enjoyment. But the living entity is minute. Because of his minuteness, whatever he desires, he cannot make them up because it's part, it's not the whole. And the part can never become the whole, no matter what he wants. So if that is what you translate to being robotic or inability to act, then you are right. Because no matter the way or language or philosophy you want to use to express it, there is no time the living entity will become the supreme controller. Is a controller under the control of the supreme controller. That is his position. But when the living entity wants to become the supreme controller, then he suffers because there is no time the living entity will become the supreme controller, because both the living entity and the material nature, which engages in the activities. That's why Lord Krishna says in that 4, 6, and 7, 7 and 8 of the Bhagavad Gita, where he said that, then he goes further to say, that the living entity, apariyam itas to anyam bina prakriti ashtada, jiva buta mahabao, that the living entity is my part, is part and parcel of me, but is superior to material nature. But that is superiority is dependent on the superior nature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So if that is what is considered as robotic, yes, the living entity is robotic in that sense. Because there's no matter how he wants to exhibit himself, that he can become the controller, supreme controller. His control is limited to the capacity that is given to him by the Supreme Lord as ability to desire.
Okay, thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Can I go for my second question?
Yeah,
Yes.
There's no answer. You can go ahead.
All right, Prabhu, thank you very much. My second question will be that the Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita, Yada Yada Hi Dhamasya. So this verse in the Gita explains the Lord why he comes down, why he made his appearance here on earth. Is to protect devotees, to reestablish the religious principles, and to annihilate the miscreants. So this is the reason why the Lord appears. But I'm thinking critically that if this is the reason, there might be a deeper reason as to why the Lord comes. And that deeper reason is what I'm looking for. Because when it comes to killing the demons, killing the miscreants, the Lord can always kill the miscreants. He doesn't have to come. Durga, Mai is there. Shiva is there. There are powerful agents that can kill the demons within a twinkle of an eye. When it comes to re-establish the religious principles, the Lord always empowers the living entities to come and to re-establish Dharma. Just like the Prabhupada came, just like Lord Jesus came, just like Prophet Muhammad came. Prophet Muhammad came to establish religious principles. There are billions of Muslims, billions of Christians, you know. So the Lord empowered these living entities to come. So when it comes to re-establish religious principles, the Lord can always make arrangements. He doesn't have to come. And to protect his devotees, devotees can always be protected, just like Ambarish Maharaj was protected. The Lord did not come directly to protect him, but he sent his extension for Ambarish Maharaj's protection. So I'm thinking that there must be a deeper reason, a real reason why the Lord have to come. That is my question. Do you have anything to say about this?
Thank you very much, Prabhuji, for your question. Beautiful question. Why does the Lord have to come? Just by his blinking of his eyes, everything can manifest at his will. Yeah, that is true. But in the same verse that you quoted, he gives the reason. The only reason is that he wants to give pleasure to his devotees. That's the only primary, that's the hidden reason of the Lord coming. He doesn't have to come and kill the demon. He doesn't have to come and protect the demon. He doesn't have to come physically to do all of this. But the Lord wants to, because love is not abstract. Love is not objective, it's subjective. So the Lord wants to his devotees to experience love of him. So for that purpose, he comes. And while he comes, he does the activity of establishing of religious principle. He protects his devotee, but primarily, the Lord's primary reason is just wonderfully to give pleasure to those of his devotees. So that is only the reason why the Lord comes. And in so many verses of the scriptures, he emphasized that same verse of chapter 4:8 of the Gita, where he says that he just wants to give the pleasure to his devotees. The Lord doesn't have to come, but because his devotee wants to see him and he wants to make them happy. Just like recently you traveled home. Mom has left it, this material world, he is gone. And just by pressing some button on your phone, you could send as much as enough funds to the village and said, okay, take care of the body and do everything. But people want to relate. So you have to physically go there. So the primary purpose of the Lord coming is not just because he wants to, he can do all of that, yes, but primarily because he wants to give pleasure to his devotee. And that is,
Yeah, Prabhu, thank you very much for the answer, but I would like you to actually go deeper because the real purpose is to give pleasure to his devotees. Then he came 5,000 years ago. Then what about us? What about the devotees here in Kali Yoga? The Lord is not willing to give pleasure to us. So yes, he came to give pleasure to his devotees, but I would like you to go deeper.
Thank you very much. The Lord manifests to us according to our capacity to receive him. The Lord
All right, Prabhu, thank you.
wants to come to us. Yeah, just like we want to see the Lord now. The Lord is like one of the daily quotes in yesterday or day before yesterday. Prabhupada's quote, it was explaining. We want to come to Krishna, but Krishna wants to come to us 10 times more than whatever we can desire to come to him. But when our desire to see him, when our desire to relate with him has not become matured enough, we can see him. The Lord is right here. The Krishna is right here in this material world, even presently as we speak. But we can only relate to him in the Bhagavatam. So therefore, when he was living in Dwapara Yuga, he said, I'm living. People in Kali Yuga, Manda, Sumanta, Manda, Yo, they have less intelligence. They are all kinds of qualities that diminishes one who is able to relate with the Lord personally. So, but because the Lord is so magnanimous, he wants us more than we can ever want him. So he gave himself in the form of the SRIMAD Bhagavatam, that we can associate with him. And when our intensity of association with Bhagavatam increases, that is why it is said, we'll go into his direct association. Actually, there is a pastor Srila Prabhupada recently shared, I think whether it's on our Krishna Africa platform, WhatsApp, that Srila Prabhupada was in a particular kirtan. He was giving a lecture. No, it was a lecture. I'm sure you must have read this past time before. He was giving a lecture. Was it a kirtan that was going on? There are several of these pastimes, but there's a particular pastimes. And the Prabhupada just went silent. He was leading kirtan. Prabhupada was sitting down. And all of a sudden, Prabhupada went into trance and he was completely silent. And everybody became, and then later the devotees came to him and asked, what was happening, Prabhupada? He said, didn't you see? Narada Muni came. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came. So Krishna is still here. He is not gone anywhere. But do we have the eyes to see him? So Arjuna had to play to Krishna. When Krishna told himself about Arjuna, when he spoke with him and he tells him everything, although Krishna is standing with Arjuna in his two-handed forms, but Arjuna said, please still show yourself to me. So Krishna showed him the gigantic form of universal form to him. And he became bewildered. He said, no, Krishna, I want this before. I don't want it, please. I don't want to see this again. I want that two-handed form. So this is the form that we can comprehend in our present conditioning. So Krishna is manifesting himself to us in this manner, in the form of SRIMAD Bhagavatam. And when by association with SRIMAD Bhagavatam, Nasta Aprayasu Abhadrisu, Nityam Bhagavatam Sevaya, so when our association with Bhagavatam becomes intensified to the extent that it purifies the heart by rendering service to Bhagavatam, then we develop the quality to be able to see the physical Lord. Even in this lifetime, Krishna consciousness is not a philosophy that says that when we go to the kingdom of God, we go and seek God. No. Right in this body, in this present life, in this present situation, Krishna is willing to manifest himself before us. But we need to develop the quality to see him in a Swayam Bhagwan form. And that is why he concluded the Bhagavad Gita when he says, Bhakti Mama Bijananti, Yavan Yash. That only by unmotivated, uninterrupted bhakti, devotion to me, can I be seen standing in front of you, Arjuna, in my 200 form as Krishna. So Krishna is here. He's manifested in his Bhagavatam, but we cannot see him because of our condition. Those devotees who are able to develop that level of devotion, even right in this present age, in this present time, can see Krishna physically.
Thank you very much, Prabhu. I think I'll be willing to see Krishna. I wish I could see Krishna like the demons and the non-devotees saw him 5,000 years ago, even though they did not recognize that is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but at least they saw him. So I wish I could see him also like that, you know. But here's the case, your explanation, I have to be completely pure before Krishna will manifest to me. And that does not actually give me that deeper meaning as to why he came. But I will take it. Thank you very, very much. My third question will be that of Lord Brahma's creation.
Oh, Prabhu,
Yeah.
Prabhu, why don't you at least let us, you know,
Yeah,
contribute to this?
I think Shimabara
Because
Prabhu has to stand up. Maybe it's
maybe
going to be a contribution to your
yeah, it
question.
is.
Your questions.
Thank
So
you, Prabhu. Thank you.
Yeah.
Go
I
ahead,
can
Prabhu.
come after India.
Yeah, so Shimabara Prabhu, please, you may go ahead, please.
Yeah, it's an important question you've asked, and it's not just you. This is one of the questions that the sages of Naimisarayan asked also. Why did Krishna descend? Why did God manifest his incarnations on earth? And the answer is given in Srimad Bhagavatam, I think First Canto, chapter 2, text 17, I think. Srimvata Swakatam Krishna, Punya Shravana Ketanam, Idyanto Abhadrani, Vidunoti Suti Satam. So we all know that verse, First Canto, I think, yes, chapter 2, text 17. So that is the answer given by Sutta Goswami to the sages of Naimisaraya to explain why God manifests his incarnations. He did not use the Gita explanation of Parichanaya Sadhuna or you know, yada yada. No, he said Krishna manifested his incarnations so that we can have something to meditate on as a means of our purification. By hearing this pastime, by speaking about them, then we become purified. It's actually our means of becoming purified. Krishna comes to enact different pastimes through different avatars for the purpose of giving us something to meditate on about him. Otherwise, we'll be speculating and we will be, you know, lost about what is the activities of God. So Sutta Goswami explained that the reason why the Lord manifested in different incarnations is primarily to give us opportunity to meditate on his pastimes as a means of attaining salvation. So it's a very clear-cut, you know, response given by Sutta Goswami. So I don't know whether this satisfies you, but you can check it up. You can read the purport, you know, to it by Srila Prabhupada. This is the reason given why the Lord manifested his incarnations. I hope that helps. Thank you.
In other words,
Prabhu.
Prabhu, you are saying that the Lord came down here to demonstrate to us what is going on in his kingdom and what he's doing with his devotees, how his devotees relate to him, his day-to-day activities, and he came to give us that pastime here for us to see exactly what is going on in his kingdom. Not that what is given in the scriptures are speculation, by naturality, that is how his activities are even in his kingdom. Is that what?
In fact, I thought I already thought you knew the answer. Maybe you're just dragging, you know.
Of course.
Salika. You know very
just
well
pulling
the
my
answer.
legs.
You know that the Lord came here to enact, you know, his activities for us to be able to meditate on, so that we don't speculate, you know. He's a person, he's real, and you know, just as you've described it, it comes to manifest his activities in the spiritual world. So when we say God is great, we should understand what it means. He lifted over an hill so that we can understand how great he is. He married 16,000 wives to show his opulences, you know, and how he's in the heart of everyone. So all this is pastimes. We meditate on them. It helps us to understand and appreciate his greatness and know him. So that is the purpose of his coming. Exactly. You know it already. Very good.
Yeah.
Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
Prabhuji. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much for the contribution. Govinda Prabhu knows the answer to the question. He just wanted to benefit some of us who do not know. So he's
I
asking a
think,
question.
yeah, I think we have last question for the day. His Grace, Harichakra Prabhu, please, you may unmute.
Yeah, Hare Krishna Prabhu. Thank you
Hare
very
Krishna.
much, Salika Prabhu, Dandavad. All
Hare
glories
Krishna
to the
Prabhu.
assembled devotees. Yeah, I was just chipping in a little comment about the question Govinda Prabhu asked. Because the last one he said, he was asking that even though some people were not were like non-devotees, but still Krishna appeared and some people saw him. And so why is Krishna not making himself manifest, even though we are not pure yet? Why are we not seeing him? So yeah, in the Mahabharata, I remember in the court of the Kurus, when Krishna Duryodhana ordered that Krishna be arrested, and Krishna showed his Vishnu form. Right, it's not everybody who saw him. They were all of them were there, but it's not everybody who saw him. But
Some
those
saw
who
only
were
the effulgence.
yeah, but those who were the real devotees, they saw him and offered their obeisances. So how do we know? Me and Govinda, how do we know whether Salika is Krishna? But because our eyes are closed, we are blinded. We will know. We will be relating to Salika anyhow we like. So what? One day, if the actual manifestation is revealed to us, that all this time Salika is Krishna himself, how do we know? So we are just following little by little, so that one day Krishna will open our eyes and we will see that Salika is Krishna. So, well, this is my little understanding. That one day, if we follow the process that we have been given, one day Krishna might open our eyes and we will see that this rascal Sahadev that we have always been, we've been calling him rascal. Maybe it was Krishna himself. How do we know? Or you Govinda yourself. This truck you are inside, how do we know that is Krishna who is riding in this truck always? Right? Yeah. How do we know? So we are only praying that Guru and Krishna opens our eyes. We keep following what they have given us, so that one day they open our eyes and we will see the real Govinda. We will see the real Sahadev, who these people are. Other than that, I don't think there is a way that we can see if even we are playing with Krishna.
Yeah, Prabhu, thank you very much. You know, who knows? Maybe you are the chakra, Krishna chakra himself that is here in this form we are seeing. How do we know? But what I'm saying, Krishna beauty, Krishna personal form was presented, and the non-devotees also saw that beautiful form of Krishna. That is what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Govinda Prabhu, but the fact is that even though Krishna was physically there, not everybody there saw Krishna. That is the thing. Even though Krishna has physically manifested there in the presence of the non-devotees, warriors, and all of them, the Mahabharata tells us that all of them saw different persons. Someone has just seen the son of Vasudeva. They were not able to see him. So that is why, to clear this doubt, that's why Sukadeva Goswami has told us in the Bhagavatam 1:11 that Vedanti Tattva Vidas, Tattva Jnana Adhyayam, Brahmeti Prameti, Bhagavan Iti Sabdaye, that the learned transcendentalist who knows the absolute truth. They call this non-dual substance Brahma, Paramatma, or Bhagavan. So it is depending on the individual level of consciousness or realization that the Lord manifests to him. And that's why I said that, of course, when we carry the Bhagavatam and we are reading, to us, we are reading a book. But to another pure devotee, when he carries that Bhagavatam, he sees Krishna directly. He's not seeing a book. So that is what we're saying, that even though right now we are thinking that Krishna is not here, but Krishna is physically here. But we cannot see him because we don't have that ability to see. So therefore, if we desire to see him genuinely, what we need to do is to intensify that level of desire with activities as given by those who have seen him. And that is what Sukadev Goswami is saying there. Those who have seen, those who know, they have given us, they said, this is Krishna, and this is the way to see him. And whatever they said is in collaboration, is in agreement with what Krishna himself said, that by bhakti, I can be seen standing in front of you, one-on-one. Like one of my gurus will say, when we actually develop that quality, we'll see Krishna right in this present body, and we'll have an handshake with him. We'll say, Krishna, so this is you. All these years I've been struggling. The Krishna will come physically in presence of us and have an handshake with us. Dhruva Maharaj, 6 months he meditated, chanted by the instructions of Narada. And after 6 months, when he saw the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he became completely astounded. He couldn't speak. The Krishna has to touch him with his conch shell on his forehead. Then he develops the ability. The same thing with Arjuna. Even though Krishna was right there in his presence, there are so many pastimes that in Mahabharata we've seen that even Arjuna, although he was presently, he was the close friend of Krishna, but sometimes, although Arjuna is not an ordinary conditioned soul, but he is acting in that capacity, he exhibits activities and he forgets completely that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Krishna plays these pastimes to make us understand that even though when he's physically present in our physical presence, we may not be seeing him. Like Arishakra Prabhu is saying, you might not be able to know that this is Krishna standing in front of me. A narration of a story, I think Srivas recounted that story, Srivas Vanachari recounted that story recently. A lady that was trying to find a temple in somewhere in Europe, and he was struggling to find the temple, and Prabhupada came physically and directed her that this is where the temple, go to that place, that is where the Hare Krishna temple is. And when she got to the temple, and she saw the multitude of Prabhupada sitting down, and he asked them, where is this person that I'm seeing is carving on this seat? They said, Srila Prabhupada, he has left the planet long time back. And he said, no, that cannot be true. I just met this man just a few minutes ago. He directed me to this place. So that soul, because of the intensity, that is just in, this is not even Bhagavatam stories of 5,000 years, 500 years ago. We are talking of 10, 20 years ago, here, right in our own life experience of Krishna consciousness. That young lady, she's not a temple devotee. She doesn't even know what is Hare Krishna. She has not even taken initiation. But because of the intensity of that our devotion to see Krishna, Krishna manifested to him in the form of his devotee. And Prabhupada physically, Prabhupada has left the planet over 50 years, but Prabhupada physically manifested himself to her and gave her direction to the temple. And that is how the Lord can be seen. It's devotion. We have to rise to that level. And to the degree we are able to intensify that level of desire, then Krishna becomes manifest to us, even in this present lifetime.
Hare Krishna, thank you all devotees.
Sahade Prabhu, please,
Hare
1 minute.
Okay.
Yeah, Arishakra Prabhu made some comments, and it looks like he was joking, but it's an expensive joke, because there are people who also use that kind of statement to say that they are God.
Personalism, yeah.
So I know maybe it's joking, but there are standards to know that somebody is not God.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not a question of whether we don't have the eyes to see him. Even those who don't have the eyes to see him, there are standards of knowing who is God and who is incarnation of God. And one of them is that his activities cannot be replicated by any ordinary person, by a human being. His activities cannot be replicated. That stands forever. You know, if somebody says
they are predicted in the scriptures also.
even if they say the scripture is hidden, we don't know it. But let him do something. Let him replicate one of the activities of Krishna. Let him show his universal form. Let him lift a house, or go over lift a hill, and let him multiply himself into 16,000 places at the same time. So the scripture says his divine activities cannot be replicated. So there's no question of whether Salika or Sahadev is God. We don't know yet. How do we know? That's not our philosophy. We don't accept that. So that joke, we should put it in
it's an expensive one. Thank you very much for
yeah.
I actually wanted
to put it in the cooler.
to mention that, but it escapes my mind. I was just focusing on the other side.
Salika, I think I need to explain myself quickly.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, even though I said that, but what I'm saying is that does that mean that Krishna cannot manifest in a way that he's not even presenting himself as the Supreme Lord, but in a particular way to somebody?
Yeah,
let me give a quick example. It's like,
excuse me. Okay, you go ahead. Go ahead, please.
It's like biblically, they say when Jesus Christ died, he made himself manifest to some of his disciples, right?
Yeah.
But he manifested as a small boy. Nobody could recognize him, and he was conversing with them till they got to the house. And whilst they started eating, then this little boy took bread and he raised the bread and he started doing exactly like he did during the Last Supper. So immediately he started making that. These devotees, they are his disciples, their attention was drawn, and then he manifested his real form to them, and he vanished.
Yeah.
So what I was saying is that it's not like I'm joking. I'm serious. That there are some people that we may be interacting with. Maybe our eyes are closed, but even though I might have mentioned what we call Salika's name, I might have mentioned Sahadev's name or Govinda's name. And that's why that is one of the reasons why I strongly believe that whichever devotee that I'm interacting with, I have to be careful the way I interact with that devotee. Because someday, somehow, you don't know, I don't know, if Krishna has presented himself in a particular way that he was coming to bless me with some blessing, and I misuse. And traditionally in our culture, we believe that sometimes some of these gods, they come in a disguise. Sometimes they come as a madman,
beggars.
Yeah, one example is if you read the Garuda Purana. In the Garuda Purana, Dattatreya manifested to Vinta, Kashyap's wife, Vinta. But when he manifested, Dattatreya came as a madman with some sores all over his body. And Vinta didn't know who he was until last moment, when Dattatreya had to manifest his actual form to Vinta. So I was just saying that, well, our interaction with these people, we are not devotional yet, and we are trying, we are following the process. But somehow or the other, Krishna can make himself manifest in a particular way that we are not even recognizing. That Guru and Krishna are giving us the opportunity to interact with this personality to get blessings, to get some, serious blessings. And the way we will interact with the person will either show whether we get the blessing or we misuse the opportunity. So it's
Hare Krishna, Hare Chakra Prabhu, thank you. We understand where you're coming from. But at the same time, like His Grace Srimad Bharata Prabhu was saying, the scriptures, Srila Prabhupada himself and previous acharyas have all told us that anybody can present himself or herself as manifestation of God. But what is the proof? So the scriptures are our guidelines. Lord Krishna came He was predicted in the scriptures. Lord Chaitanya came, he was predicted in the scriptures, which is a different scenario from the Lord manifesting himself to another individual or group of devotees, which is different. So what you are referring to is Krishna manifesting to a devotee or group of devotees, which is possible and to anyone and to everyone, provided the devotees are prepared or the Lord himself is willing to manifest in that form. But for somebody living in this world and not being predicted in the scriptures, and like Srimad Prabhu was saying, is that if his activities cannot be replicated, then we can know that this person is the Supreme Lord. So yes, because Srila Prabhupada is very, very strong on this topic that because there have been so many, excuse me to say, fake self-made gods, especially in India. So Srila Prabhupada was very, very heavy on these things. So we understand what you're saying and where you're coming from, but at the same time, those living in this human bodies with father and mother and not being predicted in the scriptures and not having activities that cannot be replicated, cannot be considered to be God or manifestation of God. God can manifest in them for some time to perform something, and then God will leave, or God will manifest to me in my little cubicle here, which is a different thing also. So we thank you all for your contributions, and we thank you very much, Salika Prabhu, for such wonderful, beautiful Krishna Katha. And at this point, we're going to humbly request all the devotees to kindly unmute, and we all chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra to express our appreciation to our revered speaker, His Grace Salika Prabhu, who is also our venerable host with a very beautiful tilak today. Jai. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare. Pancha all glories to His Grace Salika Prabhu ki.
Jai.